Welcome to Hold Fast Radio, Ride Out Life with Mental Illness. You too, ladies and gentlemen, can stay afloat in this ever-cycling existence. Stay tuned. It has been an inordinately long time since I've spoken with all of you. For many moons, many moods, and many reasons. Ooh, many moods. May I give a plug for a moment to my favorite radio show ever, The Many Moods of Ben Vaughn. I highly, highly recommend you all look it up. I listen to it on WXPN out of Philadelphia, 88.5. It's fabulous. Anyway, hello, it's Amanda Grieme. How are you? Hey, Grieme here. Today we're going to talk about Chapter 2, How I Maneuvered My Unstable Sloop. Say that 5 times really fast. Unstable sloop, unstable sloop. I'll stop there. And this is based on a workbook that I created last year based on my Hold Fast method. And the workbook is loving yourself and others with mental illness. And it's an interactive workbook and available out on my website. You can order it right there, and I'll send you a copy. I'll even sign it. Maybe send some neato things along with it. A planner, if you will. You can find it at my www.agrimebooks.com. That's Grieme with the Grieme. Check it out there. It's my new website. So before we begin today, I would like to play a little tune for you. Last time we spoke in a little more than a month ago, actually a lot more than a month and a half ago, I featured Courtney Barnett because I think she's fabulous. And if you don't know Courtney Barnett, I highly recommend you do know Courtney Barnett. Check her out. She's remarkable. She's just a rock and roller, true to form, Australian, and I love her guitar. I love her lyrics. She's a writer, and I love this tune, and I want to share it with all of you. It's called Ode to Odetta.
I swing by and you're not home.
pretty little ditty. Courtney Barnett there with Ode to Odetta. And hi, it's Amanda Grieme here with you on Hold Fast Radio, Ride Out Life with Mental Illness. And what we are doing is we are focusing on a very helpful, in my humblest of opinions, workbook that I've created. All about loving yourself and loving others with mental illness. And it's based on my Hold Fast method. The books I've written, Hold Fast, Ride Out Life with Bipolar Disorder, and Ride Out Parenting with Bipolar Disorder. And it's based on my own experience. And I want to dedicate this particular episode to a friend of mine who checked up on me yesterday, and I was so happy to hear from him, and I would like to give him a little plug, or a big one. Hello, Robert Richmond. You can find Robert Richmond, guys, at www.robertrichmond.com, and he is a culture hacker. Don't you love that title? And he has a super awesome blog. You can check it out there. My personal background in culture change. And I find him super duper interesting, and I know you will too. So, hey, Robert. Thank you for listening. So I want to get into today Chapter 2. Chapter 1 we talked about at length the last time we spoke. And that was all about how you can manage life with mental illness. You can. You really can. And I touched on the Hold Fast method that I've created, 8 steps that I utilize that have helped me through, that I think can help you through too. H is for honest. O is for just open a dialogue. L is for look to your heart. Excuse me. My computer just turned off, but you're still here, and so am I. L is for look to your heart. D is for discern. You have to discern things with logic, which is really hard sometimes. F is for face anxiety. As hard as it is, look it in the face. A is for anticipate fear. You know it's going to happen, so just anticipate it. Don't run from it. S is for step up. T is for trust the process. And there's Hold Fast. They really are a lifeboat. Very simple if you can just apply them. So today in Chapter 2 is entitled How I Maneuvered My Unstable Sloop in my workbook that's available at www.agrimebooks.com. It's interactive. It's fun. It has some really fun things to do at the end of each chapter, and it's quite pretty, I must add, and I created it. And I will send you a copy if you order it. So I'm going to read and talk a little bit about Chapter 2. So you were introduced to the Hold Fast method in Chapter 1. And Chapter 2, it's just, how did I do it? This is my story. How did I maneuver my unstable sloop? In hindsight, I feel like my teens, early 20s were a necessary unraveling to unearth this new understanding. That person, me, was shrouded in insecurity, the antithesis of hold fast, fast. Again, that's H is for honest, O is for open a dialogue, L, look to your heart, D, discern with logic, F, face anxiety, A, anticipate fear, S is for step up, and T, trust that process. But my truth, I realized in hindsight, is that, well, there were things inherent in myself that, well, it signaled a big problem. I was seldom honest with anyone about anything, especially myself. I was aware that I was suffering, but instead of opening any dialogue, I shut down and masked any truth with drugs and alcohol, and I had no idea how to deal with the pain. My heart was perpetually broken, and I know that many of you can relate. I didn't know what to do with everything that weighed so heavily on me. So this goes back to a time, just if I may go back in my Wayback Machine for a moment, to a time when I was very young, 20 years old. junior, senior in college, 4th year, 5th year, something like that. And it's when I realized I had a serious issue. Yeah, I'd been diagnosed by that time as bipolar, and I took it completely as almost a joke. I looked at the medication as something that just added to my crazy nights of overindulging in substances, particularly alcohol and marijuana. I was taking a women's studies course, and one of my majors, that was media studies at that time. English, one hand, media studies the other, a lot of film. It was fun. And I focused on a campaign for a project. It was the early 1990s Calvin Klein campaign, if anybody here remembers that. I was fascinated by the androgyny of the models. I found the David Bowie-esque appeal painfully attractive, but at the same time I was revolted by the thought that perhaps the images lent themselves as detrimental to anorexic and bulimic young women, or so I thought. That was my women's studies angle, I guess. The truth, though, was shrouded in self-loathing, and it came to fruition for me one night. See, for my project, the advertisement I chose for my study was an iconic picture at the height of the Calvin Klein Obsession campaign, featuring a very young, waif-like, almost prepubescent-looking Kate Moss. If you remember that photo, she was featured nude and strategically positioned in photographs to spell sex with her angular elbows and knees. Her pallor was that of a junkie just emerged from a Turkish bath sans makeup, heavy-lidded. Her cheekbones were wide set, making perfect hollows in her cheeks. And to me, she was the perfect cross between like a Native American goddess or I should say, a jilted medieval serf. I remember thinking she looked like a Celtic fairy morphed with Sacagawea or something. She was stunning, I thought. Her mouth was slightly agape, showing a hint of Brigitte Bardot, her teeth gapped, and her chestnut hair was haphazardly swept off her face. Her eyes peered into my soul, whispering, "I am who you are. I am who you will be. I am beautiful, and you can be too." She was indeed who I wanted to be. Her image was not representative of something I was deeply appalled by at all. She was, like I said, fairy-like perfection, photographed in black and white. I saw myself in her, and I became compulsively preoccupied. I was smitten with her image, and I felt like I was supposed to mirror it if I were to be considered attractive too. That image would make me whole, I felt like. Take away all sadness, erratic mood swings, jealousy, anger, envy, violent happiness. Everything that I felt when I was in a mixed state, unknowingly. Her image was the honesty I sought, so I thought. And being her, I thought, would make me feel whole again. Ridiculous as it sounds in hindsight, it was very real. And that particular evening, after a night of drinking and celebrating a successful women's study endeavor, I did really well on this project in particular. I took a very long walk from the drinking hovels on the main street of my college town toward home before last call, where I caught my very drunken reflection in a store window under the streetlight. And it's there where I saw myself. I was a stumbling contradiction, a miserable hypocrite. I saw a girl who didn't hold a candle to the image in her mind, and even less of a candle to her beautiful, eating disorder-riddled roommate, one who I was always concerned about and fascinated by her issues. I saw a girl who was flawed, thick, drunk, dumpy, shuffling along in faux fur and dirty Vans. I saw the girl that everyone else saw, and she wasn't good enough. She was vain but ugly, a failure, a mess, a waste of life, and a joke. That's who I felt like. That's who I was. So I fidgeted with the cigarettes in my pockets, fumbled for a lighter, walked closer to my reflection, and watched ghosts of smoke rise up toward the street lamp into the night. I inched closer and closer to my image, noticing every single flaw, every unkind word that had ever been said to me about my physical appearance, every false friend that had betrayed me was justified. I really wasn't worth it. So I stared at my disheveled body under the 2 a.m. lamplight, into my own green eyes despite snickers from passersby, and realized with every exhale I was a disgrace. It was true. I wasn't a good friend or a well-informed young woman advocating for the health and well-being of my cohorts. I was a phony, a poser, nothing. I wasn't Kate Moss sprawled like an angelic junkie waif on the back cover of Elle magazine. In fact, I couldn't find her in my drug-addled, beer-drowned reflection, and that is the truth. That was my truth. And that is why I was so sad. So I shuffled over the bridge that night toward my home in the dark, wondering if I could just disappear completely right there into the icy, icy water below. And it seemed the perfect opportunity. I was alone. It was almost the weekend. No one would question my disappearance for at least a day or two. I remember thinking this through very closely, and even that was debatable. By then, I would have floated to the Atlantic and become bloated, unrecognizable fish food. End of story. My story, at least. No more boxing matches in my young brain. No more hypocrisy. No more heartache. I chuckled at the sky, amused by the irony once again. Because hours earlier, I was elated, proud, a strong young woman making a difference with her innovative thinking and writing. That was when I realized I was totally out of control. I felt it. I climbed onto the railing, and I sat smoking, teetering on the edge of the bridge, watching the night sky warbled in the water below when a truck pulled over. It was a girl I hardly knew from one of my classes. "Hey, need a ride?" I fumbled with another cigarette, unable to light it. She pulled over, put the truck in park, and walked over to me with a lighter. Her boyfriend sat in the passenger seat watching. She cupped our hands and lit my smoke. "Thanks," I inhaled. "Yeah," she smiled. She looked at me teetering on the railing of the bridge. "Hey, come down from there. It's cold. Hop in, I'll take you home." She was wearing a miniskirt, and her skinny little legs were shivering in the streetlight. And that was it. That was the moment that I knew something was terribly wrong. I was aware because when I jumped into her truck, I felt completely fine. I mean, completely fine, like better than I'd felt all day. And I rattled on and on about how beautiful the river looks at night and how I love the night air and how lucky we all are to have the freedom to appreciate the evening. And she smiled agreeably at me and headed toward my infamous house. It was a den of iniquity at that time for many. And when we arrived, I thanked she and her boyfriend profusely and said, oh, so rude of me. You guys want to come in, have a couple beers, smoke a joint? I'm sure someone else is still up too. I smiled. I saw her boyfriend then. I remember this very closely. He rolled his eyes, and I saw his hand kind of gently move down her leg and squeeze her knee, and that was her exit. She said, no, it's late. Class in the morning. Get some sleep. She waved, and then she pulled away in her little Toyota pickup. I remember her knees were perfectly bony, and I stood and thought about it, silently comparing mine to hers. Weird. And at that moment, very deep sadness settled back as I wandered into my house, past my room, through the silent living space, into the bathroom. I looked in the mirror and traced a tear down my face and watched it disappear into my mouth. I went from elated in their truck to wanting to shed my skin. I wanted to peel off my layers like an onion. I wanted the feelings gone. And that is when I gagged myself, literally, until I threw up everything I could. And with every gag, I felt like a piece of me was connecting like a puzzle. My shattered image of myself pieced together like broken glass. The old me, it was gone. And I would become the waif at any cost. It was my new beginning. My image in the mirror would dictate my mood for years to come, and it did. In fact, going back in time again, 2 weeks later, from that super strange evening, at my next psychiatrist appointment, I proudly strutted into the waiting room in a wool miniskirt, thigh-high tights, a wool sweater. I was on top of the world, 10 pounds lighter and closer to my goal. I'd taken on a catwalk of sorts, and it felt really good. Wow, you look happier. The medication seems to be helping you, yes? The doctor said, and I said, yeah, I feel good. Walking everywhere, eating well, I'm sleeping, not drinking as much. Wink, wink. I gave him a sideways smile, and he seemed to believe my lies, and that made me feel pretty powerful. Because I hadn't actually taken my meds in days. He winked. You look thinner, he smiled. It really becomes you. He patted me on the knee, and I giggled like a little schoolgirl. Thinner was what I wanted to hear. I was elated. So even thinner I would become. That is what the male persuasion thought became me, so it must be the truth, right? My truth. And that was something I could control. I thought that would make me happy again. It's that warped thinking, too, that just manifests itself differently for years and overcame me like fog well into my 30s, even when I felt a sense of stability. The girl in that 2 a.m. lamplight reared her ugly head. She held me below the surface, gasping and reaching for something to help me stay afloat. And then, the universe gave me the ultimate gift. My purpose became crystal clear. All of the steps became my reality with the birth of my daughter, River. She happened when I was 37 years old, and she's the reason I hold fast. I found my lifeboat in her. I got over myself in a big way. Now, many moons later, I live to share how I stay afloat in this ever-cycling existence and how I maneuver my unstable sloop. Dizzying as motherhood may feel sometimes, she has officially saved me from myself. Children are remarkable that way. So motherhood was the catalyst for my self-transformation, a metamorphosis, and it was just the beginning of a necessary transcendence. It was the first step in separating from the ensnaring diagnosis of rapid cycling bipolar disorder that would just not allow itself to be ignored, despite the copious amounts of blue and pink imagination slayers that I like to call it. I was prescribed them, and I took them for the most part, and I was forced to be honest with myself with the onset of being a mom. I grieved. I held tight to the want-to-be existential ways of myself, the other me. The breakup was intense, but the moment that I realized the responsibility of another life was in my arms, myself, the other me, resentfully climbed out of my mind and leapt one arm's length away from me. That was the moment that motherhood made me get over myself. It's true. Before motherhood, I could never understand or cared for that matter, things like security or financial planning, career goals. Boring. I had no capacity to think ahead. There was just now. Not out of lack of motivation or laziness, but due to an inability to focus on something less than interesting. Yeah, even though it was perhaps necessary to me for more than a few seconds. Anything beyond short term wasn't important as far as I was concerned. It would all work out or it just wouldn't be. Everything was as it should have been regardless. I loved the urgency of now, laughter in the moment, the party. I lived at that pendulum. It was fun. I couldn't stand the thought of having to answer to someone, or specifically someone who questioned my whims and inconsistencies. I never dreamed of a magical wedding, a white gown, Prince Charming. It just all seemed preposterous. I simply did what felt right to me at the time. That's how I lived. That is who I was. I just wanted to see what would happen next, but not too many steps beyond that. So that was life for me. I love to live. I like to board a plane. I like to go somewhere new. Strangers were new friends for me who never had to become old friends. My passion was deep as the ocean. I felt everything, but then I felt nothing in a single breath. I simply coexisted with existence before motherhood. But now I know, as a mom, I understand, thinking ahead. It was a forced issue initially, but my self-absorption index has dwindled into nothingness, thank God. Mentally and emotionally, I accepted this new role kicking and screaming, but honestly, have never felt more, stable, alive, and honest. That's the key. I didn't succumb to the illness. That was my choice. I live with it like a roommate. And you can too. She, my roommate, is difficult. She's lovable, sometimes home too long, often time gone for days. Often she's punctual with the rent. Many times she shirks all responsibility. Sometimes she is deliciously fun and inspiring, though often infinitely dark. But she, myself, is always there at arm's length if I need to tap into her. Myself is an appendage of my totality. She can overcome me like thick fog, but will dutifully go back to her room, back to her chrysalis state when my daughter needs me. And this is my choice. I'm sure you can relate. So, although myself still suffocates me sometimes and fills me with violent happiness that blinds my senses, she ultimately enjoys solitude. The sound of a child needing something, anything, sends her back to the cocoon in a huff. She just can't be bothered with such triviality. And me, on the other hand, has both hands on the ship lines in the storm, both goofy-footed feet on the surfboard in the waves. Myself simply hangs below deck or curls up on a lonely spot in the beach, slugging rum and feeling sorry for herself. Whereas me has chosen to hold fast, because this too shall pass, she says. Me found her lifeboat. In addition, I have married a wonderful man who also has a form of bipolar disorder, among other difficult mental maladies. And instead of being a hindrance, this has allowed us both to learn from each other, creating a very unique perspective. So because of my experiences, I feel confident that I can help both bipolar persons and their kin navigate the many times erratic behavior inherent with this dis-ease that we deal with. So in closing, I leave you, my fair listeners, with some very, very profound words. Some of my favorite words, actually, from the book called The 30-Day Mental Diet by a gentleman by the name of Willis Kinnear. His words and lessons, although archaic at this point, antiquated, I should say, not archaic, they still resonate with me. And I happened upon them many moons ago, and they were written many, 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 many moons before that. When it is imperative that we as parents, friends, spouse, co-worker, have to move forward regardless of our mental state for the sake of someone else, you have to remember this. Quote, strange as it sounds, it is impossible for you to fail. For if you fail, you have succeeded in being a failure, unquote, says Kinnear. He continues, for the most part, people feel that they are a success in any endeavor when it has a favorable outcome, and a failure when it is not accomplished. But that's not necessarily true. Closer consideration will show that success is the achievement of the dominant idea you have in mind. And what you achieve always corresponds to your thinking. In this respect, you never fail. You always succeed. Whether the outcome of your endeavor is favorable or unfavorable does not even enter into the matter, unquote. Thank you, Willis Kinnear. Isn't that good? Remember that. Remember that. In summary, I think it's really important to note that everybody that you know, including yourself, that I know, has a backstory. You know what I mean? Mental illness doesn't discriminate, and it manifests itself differently at different stages in life. We all know this. The stories, the backstories, are seldom pleasant and many times scarring and disturbing to those who experience them. But the key to moving beyond the backstory, that 2 a.m. lamplight image in a dark window that haunts you, is just let go. Just let go and float to the surface. Swim forward. Focus on the positive. Climb into that lifeboat, because that's where you're going to find yourself. You're in there. Your backstory is just that, a backstory. It's one of the many facets that make up the beautiful being that is you. It is just a tiny piece, one that adds character to your overall puzzle. You must remember that you are not responsible for others' behavior. It doesn't define you. You too can stay afloat, manage your relationships, and manage your relationships with bipolar kin, and be the best you can. You can. It is not impossible. Think about this. And here's some fun stuff you can do. And really fun stuff if you have the book in front of you and you can use that to write in as well. But if the book is not an option at agrimebooks.com, listen to this. Go over it in your mind. Practice. Chapter 3 explores the importance of your lifeboat and how it will make it easier for you to open your door to clarity and communication. You have to climb into your lifeboat that keeps you afloat, because we all have one. And in our boats, if we choose to utilize them, there are many important tools to help you move forward. So I want you to take a pause right now. Take a moment. Take a deep breath. Because it's time for you. I think it's imperative that to understand the hold fast method and to hold fast personally, you need to apply it to your own experience. So I have an exercise in here, and I think it's a lot of fun. And it'd be really fun if you could do this during a little downtime today after you listen to this. It's an exercise where you get to write a simple poem. I don't mean a masterpiece. I mean just a simple piece. A simple piece that helps you focus. I'm going to leave it at that. So what you want to do in the poem is describe your loved one or yourself. Very challenging. So if you're looking to assist a loved one with mental illness, or if you're looking to better yourself or find ways to cope, use hold fast as the first letter in each line. So you're writing hold fast, like an acrostic poem, down on the left-hand side. And that will be the first letter. Instead of honesty, open to discussion, logic, etc., you are going to describe yourself or your loved one. So here's an example. So hold fast, written down the left-hand margin. This is an introspective poem about a person named Bob. Example. Bob is H, honest to his friends. O, only happy when it rains. I'm only happy when it rains. Love that song. Remember that song by Garbage? Anyway. O, only happy. Oh, I already said that. Only happy when it rains. L, loves animals and gardening. D, dreams of living on a boat. F, feels empty when in large crowds. A, answers to many names. S, sings to his cats. And T, tries to make each day count. So again, what you're doing is you're taking hold fast and you're making it your own. Make it reflect you, or make it reflect a loved one, or do both. It really opens up a line of introspective thinking. You look a little deeper into yourself. Again, Bob is honest to his friends, only happy when it rains, loves animals and gardening, dreams of living on a boat, feels empty when in large crowds, answers to many names, sings to his cats, and tries to make each day count. And I think that's really cool. This is a really short exercise I've developed. This will help you start to identify with Holdfast. Give it a shot. Try it out. I'm so anxious to talk to you next time in day 3. And I leave you today with some delicious Radiohead. Morning Bell. Kid A. And I thank you so much for listening. And I can't wait to talk next time. Paging Dr. Friedman. Thank you so much, everybody. See you next time on Hold Fast Radio, Ride Out Life with Mental Illness. Thank you for being a part of Hold Fast Radio, Ride Out Life with Mental Illness. Until next time.